Hey, it's Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
What a pleasure it is to talk to Dr. Robert Jeffress. He's got, of course, the show on Faith Talk Atlanta, Pathway to Victory. Doc, how are you?
Great. Getting used to this strange new world we're in.
It is a strange new world for Dan and I. As I mentioned before, we went live on Zoom and on the radio. We've been broadcasting from our home studios. We kind of like it now, but in the beginning, it was quite a challenge. How did you do how are you doing with the Zoom and the technology?
Not very well, as you're going to hear throughout this interview.
That's funny. We do want to talk about your new book. It's Courageous, 10 Strategies for Thriving in a Hostile World. Before we get there, all of us are a tad consumed with the COVID-19 pandemic. It's affected our churches, our families, our communities. Just give us, if you will, before we get into your brand new book, a word of encouragement to those inside the church, outside the church that may be a little fearful.
Well, I'd remind people of 2 Timothy 1:7. God, pardon me. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and power and of a sound mind. And, God doesn't want us to be paralyzed by panic, but at the same time, he wants us to exercise a sound mind and common sense. And so I think that's the balance we're all finding. We certainly shouldn't worry about anything. Philippians 4 says, instead, pray about everything. But at the same time, we need to practice social distancing. We need to quit shaking hands and do some common sense things. And, I think there are a lot of great things that are happening as a result of this pandemic. I mean, think about Easter Sunday. We had, and I know many churches experienced this, we had more than 1 million people watching our service online Easter Sunday. 10,000 prayed to receive Christ as Savior.
Wow.
Now, certainly
Awesome.
part of that is because we had the President of the United States worshiping with us, and that helped a little bit. But even beyond that, we were having, 200,000 and 300,000 people at a time worshiping with us, thousands of decisions for Christ. Lots of churches are experiencing this very same thing. And, I think about Paul's words in Philippians 1, when he said, I want you to know, brethren, that my circumstances have turned out for the progress of the gospel. Paul was rejoicing in his circumstances. And as my old mentor, Howard Hendricks, says, when he said his circumstances, he wasn't on the French Riviera sipping a pina colada when he wrote those words. He was isolated. He was under chains. He was imprisoned, facing what could have been his execution. But, he rejoiced at his isolation because his imprisonment was helping him fulfill his life mission, and that is to spread the gospel as far as possible. And I would just say to Christians, this whole pandemic has been a wake-up call to really help us refocus on what our real priority is. I mean, if your priority is peace or pleasure or prosperity, this pandemic is a terrible, terrible inconvenience. But if your desire in life, your focus is seeing as many people come to Christ as possible, well, there couldn't be a better time in human history to see that happen than now.
We're talking with Dr. Robert Jeffress, First Baptist Church of Dallas, and also Pathway to Victory that you hear on Faith Talk Atlanta. So on the radio show, Dr. Jeffress, what are you guys doing? Are you addressing the pandemic issue at all? And how are you guys encouraging folks there?
Well, we are, and we are addressing it in an interesting series called Choose Your Attitudes, Change Your Life. My friend Chuck Swindoll said one time, he said, the older I get, the more I realize that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to what happens to you. Attitude is everything. If this pandemic has shown us anything, it has shown us that we cannot control what comes into our life. This pandemic has forever dispelled the illusion that we control our life or we control our circumstances. Who would have imagined that this thing out of left field, this enemy or invisible enemy, as the president calls it, would have come into our life and disrupted our life like it is. I mean, it's just unbelievable. We can't control those things, but we can control our choices and how we respond. And in this series, Choose Your Attitudes, Change Your Life, I'm talking about 11 essential attitude choices we make. Things like choosing relaxation over stress, choosing faith over worry, choosing forgiveness over bitterness. I think it was William James, the founder of modern psychiatry, who wasn't a Christian, but he made a startling admission one time. He said, perhaps the greatest discovery of this century has been that if you can change your attitude, you can change your life. Well, as a Christian, I would say perhaps the greatest discovery is that if you can change your attitude, you can change your life and your eternity. So that's what this new series is about, that we air on your station, many others every day on Pathway to Victory.
That is so good. Dr. Robert Jeffress, Pathway to Victory. You can hear it on Faith Talk Atlanta. Go to faithtalkatlanta.com to find out more. Before we go, Dr. Jeffress, we do want to talk about your brand new book, Courageous, 10 Strategies for Thriving in a Hostile World. Now, you put all this together before this whole pandemic. So let's walk through some of these steps.
Yeah, let me explain this book because it's really so interesting that it came out in February, right as this thing was getting started. And what I did in this book was I took the 10 survival tactics that survivalists tell us you need to use when you're in a threatening situation like an avalanche or a plane crash. Things like don't panic, do the next right thing, remember your training. And I applied them to how we're to live our Christian life in a hostile world. You know, C.S. Lewis described this world as enemy-occupied territory. And that's a great description if you're a Christian trying to live out your faith. Right. And so I take these 10 survival tactics and apply them to life. My friend Oliver North read the manuscript. He said, for decades, I've taught these very same survival tactics to Marines. It never dawned on me that I could use them in the Christian life as well.
Well, we're talking to Dr. Robert Jeffress of Pathway to Victory and at First Baptist Church, Dallas. So what do you want folks to walk away with this new book that's out? And again, timely. And obviously God had a purpose in you writing that right then and then releasing it right then, because it's very timely information. What do you want folks to walk away with as they read it?
Well, I would just say that we do face incoming attacks from without, from within, from below, our adversary, the devil. But God has given us everything we need to not just survive, but thrive in whatever situation we find ourselves in. You know, in John 16:33, Jesus was very honest. He said, in this world, you will have tribulation. Being a Christian doesn't exempt you from financial difficulty, marital stress, or the coronavirus. You're going to have difficulty, but then he said, take courage, for I have overcome the world. And my book, Courageous, is how to take courage and make it a part of your everyday life.
Check out Courageous. You can get it at Amazon, any Christian bookstore, and also you can go to Pathway to Victory to find out more. Dr. Jeffress, we appreciate you so much. We'd love to talk to you later on about another book that you have planned, talking about America. Let's do that. We got to take a break. Hey, we'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.